All right, hello everyone. It's Max here, Medium 2, and we have Richard Crim, a writer I've been following on Medium for a long time. I'm a huge, huge fan. And he was the one that really, I understood that climate change was an issue, but he was the one of his graphs, which I hope we'll talk about today, that really just, like, that was the one that sort of exploded in my head to just finally get it, um, what's going on. Anyway, Richard, you're just saying that, yeah, it's unseasonably warm.
This is probably the warmest winter that it has been in the northern hemisphere. And they're going to say 125,000 years. I'm going to think closer to 2 million years, realistically. Um, in the last paper, you saw the Earth's energy imbalance graph, um, where it showed the last 150,000 years. And the difference between an ice age, glacial maxima, and the period we were living in, the Holocene, was about it went from zero. The range was about 4/10 of a watt per meter squared in climate forcing. That's the difference we've been in for 3 million years back and forth. And then you look at what it's been for the last 3 years, and as Hansen points out, it jumps a whole point. So, we went from like zero point 0.4 to 1.4 in 10 years, over the last 10 years. And yeah, we have no idea what's coming. I mean, the warming is this. This is the 2023 was the warm, literally the warm up year. We're going to hit probably over 2C. I'm predicting probably in the range of 2.1 to 2.2 by April. This El Nino is going to peak like that next year. And Hansen's completely right. I commented it in the 2022 climate report that and now many have picked up on this as well. I wasn't the first, but it's a step ratchet pattern. You get an El Nino, and that's the step up, and then it'll cool slightly back down, but it never goes back all the way down to what it was before. So it's always this ratcheting up. And the El Nino is basically the heat builds up in the Pacific, and when the heat builds up enough, it triggers an El Nino condition, which releases a lot of heat out of the ocean into the atmosphere so that it can be more efficiently carried away. It's how it's like when your car radiator overheats, the fan kicks in. El Nino is sort of like the planetary fan kicking in. It dumps a lot of heat out of the ocean and carries it off in the atmosphere, but it means a major heating event for the atmosphere. We're going to get a lot of heat next year. It'll cool off a little bit because the ocean got colder, but doesn't change that energy imbalance. We're not going to go between low 1.5 again. We hit one. This is it, 1.5. And at the new rate of warming implied by this energy imbalance, we're going to hit 2 degrees by the early 2030s. No doubt about it. This is just catastrophic. And yet, again, this is just beginning to penetrate the mass media. When you look at what the New York Times has been publishing, did you see Raymond Zhao's article? And I only bring it up because the Times did a thing of their 10 most read articles of the year, and one of them was a climate article, which was, hey, yay, climate change. It's breaking into people's attention. Unfortunately, it was the one right here at the end of the year when he says, some scientists are getting worried that climate change might be, something weird might be happening. But don't worry, this result is actually in the models, right? And it sounds like, oh, trust the models. Okay. What he's not telling you is, yes, this is the absolute worst case in the worst possible scenario that they used to laugh at, that Zeke Housefather last year said, oh, we should just toss that model because it's so pessimistic and unreal. It makes people scared, and the doomers keep using it to scare people. So we should just toss that one. Yes, that's the scenario that's happening now, the absolute worst case. But don't worry, because it's in the model.
Yeah, if we can.
So I'm sorry, I just went on a monologue there. Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, just to like bring viewers back. So when did you first start writing about climate change on Medium?
My first piece is in 2021. It's the Arctic. It's raining in Antarctica and the Arctic is on fire. And that's kind of my manifesto piece, right? Every Medium writer who's sort of a top, not a just general purpose, general whatever writer, particularly climate writers, you write that first piece and it's why am I here, the manifesto, right? And so it's a long piece and it has all these sections. But yeah, that was my first piece, August 2021. I was going to start writing on climate a little bit earlier, but then COVID happened and I wrote about nothing but COVID for about a year.
Yeah, I don't remember where I picked you up on the climate change thing, but I remember, well, let's tell one little story because I think it's sort of interesting. So in the beginning, when I was reading you about climate change, there were various people that would comment that were sort of climate deniers. And then at some point you said, listen, I've had it with you guys. I'm not answering you anymore. So, I mean, comment away, but I'm not wasting my time. And then
yeah, that was,
sorry.
Yeah, that was late 2022. I got really, I was done with that. Not, because at that point I realized the debate is over. We're going to know what's happening here in another year. And I'm not going to waste any more time arguing with you or trying to convince you of anything. It's going to become reality is going to decide the issue for us.
Right. Well, on that subject and on what you're just talking about today, that it's just so warm outside. So one of those guys that was always climate denying, and you didn't answer him, I thought, I'm gonna step in here. So I said to him, I said, answer me truthfully, really be truthful here. In your experience, pretend you know nothing. And because we're the same age, have things gotten warmer or colder? And he didn't answer because he knew. It's like, they can make the arguments for argument's sake, but I mean, you have to be, well, again, you can still make the claim like, oh, it's just the randomness of the past 10 or 20 years, but you can't say it hasn't changed.
No, at some point, the idea of natural variation really goes out the window. I mean, how many once in a 1,000 year, once in a millennia, once in a century, storms do you have to have happen in a single decade before it's like, okay, even if it is natural variation, it's not happening in our favor, gets beaten into people. We're not quite there yet. I don't know if you read any of my political pieces, mm-hmm. but I did one a couple years ago where I talked about the 2022. It was the run-up for the 2022 election, and in Virginia, there had been this whole thing that the schools were full of groomers, that they were grooming children to accept transsexuals and pedophilia and just all this complete idiotic bullshit. And I said, with Republican media, there is always this little bit of truth. There is grooming going on. They're being groomed about climate change, and they don't even see it, because if you look at what's going on in the climate denier sphere, it's not all crazy bullshit. There are the whack jobs, but because they are a funded network by the Koch brothers and fossil fuels. I mean, fossil fuels hire Madison Avenue, for God's sakes, and they fund this network of astroturf organizations that look like grassroots, right? They get it. It's like the Republican political party. When the messaging comes out, they're very consistent. So, there'll be all these little voices floating ideas, and then suddenly you can tell the messaging, this is how we're going to respond on this issue, and they are in lockstep, right? Then suddenly everybody's on point. And it's much the same if you follow the climate deniers. There'll be this weird lasers from space thing, or HARP, they're still on that going on, but then they'll get this is the new talking point, natural variation. And bam, everybody's on point. Or this is the new way we talk about CO2. Instead of parts per million, we talk about parts per 10,000, because it's that, then you're telling people, oh, we're really going to get upset about the difference between 2 molecules per 10,000 and 3 molecules per 10,000. Yeah, does that sound serious to you? And it is just sways people. And they have this multifaceted set of organizations and people, some of them on Medium. We both know who I'm talking about. First name, David. And they are the testing lab for these ideas. They write things, and if they write, they put these ideas out. And as soon as one of them gets traction, then bam, all the others suddenly are on point. They're very good at climate disinformation, and it's really hard to fight, and it has an effect. This round of warming, they're gonna think about it in terms of natural variation. We're not gonna get as much of the green push that we should, because the resistance to it is so deeply inset, particularly among older Republicans. But it could have an effect on the election, because the younger Republicans, they actually believe in climate change. They just don't think it's going to happen to them. So this year could be a major break point on that. And again, I give long rambling answers. You feel free to cut me off and be a good editor, because I will talk your ear off.
No, because I can ramble better than you can. Or worse than you can, however you want to put it.
Yeah. Okay, so last year, if you remember, right after the invasion of Ukraine on March 1st, I wrote a prediction piece. And this is where I crossed the line from being just a sort of run-of-the-mill analyst into being fringe, because I said, look, this invasion is about climate change, and what's about to happen is related to the climate. This is not Putin being crazy. This is Putin looking ahead to what's happening in the climate and thinking about how to capitalize on that. And what's about to happen is this perfect storm. One, we're going to have an El Nino. That was obvious to everyone except the most wildly optimistic people at NOAA and NASA, who were still forecasting as late as last January that there was only a 50-50 chance of that El Nino happening. So I said, we're going to have an El Nino. The second thing, I said, it's going to be really, really supercharged, because something has happened to the Earth's energy imbalance. And that's a term you're going to hear an incredible amount about soon, because it is emerged as in bold capital letters, flashing red and sirens going off, the issue in climate change, in climate science. What's happened to the albedo? Why is the Earth's energy imbalance suddenly jumped from about 0.5 watts per meter squared to 1.4 watts per meter squared, almost tripled in just 10 years, particularly when basically for the last 3 million years, it has not gone above 0.5. That's how long we've been in this current climate cycle where we're sort of bumping along the bottom of the, rock bottom of CO2 levels, 3 million years. So we just tripled the amount of energy in the Earth's climate system in the last 10 years. The effects of that are now being hit. So I said, look, we got all this energy pouring into the system. The oceans have responded by just soaking up energy, heat like a sponge. The oceans are record warmth year after year after year. You can just see, zetajoules, hundreds of millions of atomic bombs worth of energy being poured, flooding into the oceans and warming them. The combination of these three factors is just this perfect storm of warming. I said, we're about to have off the charts warmth in about 12 to 18 months was my forecast then. And that was in March of 2022. And then wham, 2023, the El Nino started that summer, and the warming has been off the charts since then. And last January, when I saw the projections for the European projections for what that El Nino could do, they forecast, if you remember, there was that chart where the forecasts were kind of in three groups. The two low ones, which were NASA and NOAA, the ones in the middle, which were like the Australians, the Japanese, bunch of universities, and then you had the two at the top, which were the new models that are using paleoclimate data, the same, basically, the high models. And I said, yeah, those are the ones that are probably going to be right. And those are the ones that are going to put us at about 2 degrees of warming for the peak of the El Nino. Man, that's about how it's played out. That's about where we're going to hit before this starts to cool down.
Yeah, I think, we can go back up from the beginning, not the beginning, but one of the charts that you put in most of your stories, which I agree is a very important part, but I think I definitely buy it, but I think many people don't quite get it. So I'm wondering if you can make more of an argument. And it's a chart where you basically take what are estimated CO2 levels. Well, the first chart you do is you say, listen, here's a chart of CO2, here's a chart of temperature. They match one-on-one, end of discussion, right?
Right.
And then the second chart you show is say, okay, well, based on archaeological records, ice cores, satellites recently, whatever, we've mapped the CO2 over time. And again,
oh yeah, paleontology, the paleoclimate record.
But you've combined them all into one chart, and basically what you're showing is you're saying, hey, listen, this is where humans have thrived. This is where there are no humans. So if you think
you like that chart,
I love that chart, but I think I think many people don't quite get what. Like, to me, it's the slam dunk chart of all the charts, because the slam dunk basically saying, if you believe that that humans have to live within a very, very specific environment, this chart is saying we're all about to die. If you believe that, and it's just based on common sense. So, but anyway,
going back to if you looked at that chart and you didn't know anything else about the climate system, what would make sense to you, right? Would 440 parts per million of CO2 sound like a good idea to you then? Probably not.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed this first interview with Richard Crim. We actually talked for an hour, but I asked him some bad questions, and I got us off into some horrible tangents. So I figured just for this first interview, I'll just post this, the beginning parts, and hopefully I can interview Richard again and be much more organized and more more coherent. I'll be more coherent. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, it's tremendous fun talking to him, and look forward to seeing you later. Thanks.